Hello, everybody. Denisse here. Welcome to our RED program review meeting. In this opportunity, we're going to be reviewing RED program 161, which is the one that they recorded right after the event. It is a short program, but there's a lot to see there. So I think it's really like a really nice program. So yeah, what I was saying earlier, that in our group, I always want to leave out a space, a private space after the recording, so that we are able to just start generating. I mean, I'm sure it like this is what we have been doing, but more consciously create this space where we all feel comfortable talking so that we don't like the exposure. Because I understand the exposure in LGC sometimes it can be really overwhelming talking about LGC. Yes. Because the feedback, it's like it's received by the body sometimes, right? Or if I explained myself and it wasn't the concept wasn't quite right or something, sometimes the feedback it's like really intense and really strong in our bodies. So what we want to do here in the space, we want to generate an environment where that is reduced to the lowest level, where we can be comfortable just talking about it. I myself have been working a lot on that, right? Because if I am extremely sensitive to concept errors. So sometimes I get a little jumpy when I hear something that when I'm like, like as if it burns, but it's not personal. I'm, sometimes I'm just like overly sensitive. So I myself have been working a lot about that on that. I'm like, okay, yes, we have to uh, create the resources that we need so that we can support each other. And if there needs to be an adjustment in the concepts, this can happen in the most soft way possible because I don't want anybody to get scared or to anybody to not want to talk or to express themselves because I really do want this to progress so that we have conversations, right? So that this is not just the part of because it's we can think of it as like a little presentation. Yeah, the first part is the presentation, the explanation of the material and all. But then this other part is really important as well. The feedback, the lateralization, the conversation, the exposure. Maybe I have like a question or maybe I have like something that I want to talk about. So we do want to generate this environment where we feel good doing that. Okay. So hopefully we can achieve that. And I just want to like incentivate you guys to start talking, even if it's hard. I know it's hard to talk about LGC. I know it's really hard, but like do it. Do it. Well, for Marjolaine, I think Marjolaine is the one that has the less blockage. Sometimes also Molly. Yeah, sometimes also Molly when you feel more comfortable. Ninke feels comfortable, but then sometimes they are really short. What you say is like really to the point. So I feel like we want to pull more because I know there's more. I know
Yeah.
there's more. Um, so hopefully we can achieve this. I know it's a challenge for everybody, but hopefully we can do it, okay? So, anybody want to say anything before we start? Nobody wants to say anything. Go, go.
Yeah, I'm so happy because I am in a conference at this moment, and it's so insane because people are asking question about the logic. So I'm not
Okay.
mentioning the name about the logic, but they are
Mm-hmm.
curious how it's working, and they ask me the most intelligent, strange question, and then I'm standing there and answering. So I was driving home for this meeting and I was really thinking, oh, I wish I could talk more about the logic. So
Mm-hmm. Mm.
yeah, it's
So
wonderful.
think of this space as a training for that. Mm-hmm. Really good. Really good. Is Jeff gonna join? No, maybe. Says Jeff,
Maybe he's
maybe.
on another call. Yeah,
Okay. All
but
right.
if he's off the call, he'll be coming down.
I love how he put it on the on his name. He's like Jeff, maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're gonna open the document so we can start with the thing. I always begin the videos like glitching. I'm like, welcome to the program. Well, it's program 161. Program. When I watch back on the recordings, I'm like, oh my God, why do I begin the videos like that? And then as we go in, I start to flow better. So, like, just bear with me. When I begin the emissions, I'm usually like glitching.
No
Okay.
problem.
Let's do it. Red program 161. Okay, so no, before we start this, so that we don't confuse our processor, we have to locate where we are today. So we're gonna open lab 12, which has been great. It has been really, really great. Okay, so lab 12 begins with day 177. And 177 is the words Planeta Mercurio, which is the first planet in the solar system, right? The first orbital is Mercurio, which is the orbital that receives the first, like that directly when the solar radiation is received firstly by the first orbital, of course, which is Mercury. So Planeta Mercurio, when we add those two words together in Spanish, we get 177. So this is really interesting to find that 177, the frequency 177 is where we begin with lab 12. And remember, lab 12 is the first lab in the first lab that has to do with someone else who isn't me, the other who isn't me. Yes, because the first 11 laps, what happens? We are renovating our captation, our function, our action, our destiny, our administration, our memories, our values. And then we have the octave that starts to synchronize all of that. Yes, because we are dealing with the new solar code every year, right? So in lap 8, we are synchronizing all of that. And then we unify all of that, and that it turns into the update in 9. And then in 10, we have a new creation. And 11, we have that we put that creation into the context. So everybody does this every year. So we have the first 11 laps that have to do with myself. And then the second 11 laps where I am going to dedicate to the other who is not me, who also had their first 11 laps. So this is where it starts to get really dynamic. It ceases to be so dense and so like, yeah, because we've finished this first part. So it gets like more exciting, more dynamic, more movement, more interaction, usually in the second part of the year. So we are in this solar day 739800. So we have a sort of like look at this 9800. So we could read this as a reset, a solar reset of parameter 98. 98, if we want to add like to our conceptual base to the concept of 98, it has to do with the progression of the octave or the update of the octave, yes? Because an octave needs to have the capacity to progress because it needs to have constant novelties so that it can continue to exist. If not, if it's only repetition, if it's only like pulling from the memories and repeating, then we lose credit for materialization. Yes. So this is like a really important day, and we come from 739799 yesterday. So today is 1A2, day 6 of lab 12, day the 1st of July. So just so that we locate ourselves in the day. And then we're gonna go back to the program, which was recorded in Lab 11. It was recorded on the 10th. Yeah, on the first day of Lab 11 it was recorded, which was day 161. It was like right after the event. So Letty and Ale were together, of course, because Letty was on the event. So they recorded the program together, and Ale really loves Letty, loves Letty. So Ale gets really happy and excited when they are able to do the program together. So she just obviously starts talking about the event, how wonderful it was. It was really wonderful. And you know, Ale, before the event, she was constantly talking about how the event was going to be very emotional, very exciting, right? And this was actually like, it was really, really emotional and exciting. It was like literal. We were all very excited, and the people from the hotel as well, like the people working in the hotel, that they were not understanding anything that was going on. Wait, oh, here. They were not understanding anything that was going on, but they were like really excited about. Wait, sorry, I clicked the button in Zoom. Hold on, let me. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Okay. Wait. It's because I pushed the button and something moved.
Yeah.
Okay. Here. Yeah. Yeah. So all the people from the event were like really curious about what's going on, and they were like really feeling it too, even though they didn't understand anything. So yeah, it was like a very immersive event. We had a very immersive experience. And we never stop learning, because the development never stops. It never rests, okay? I really, let me open the door for the dog. Córrele, 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 córrele. So a really important metric that we had on the event, we measured the days from the first event, like the last day of the first event, which was on the 9th of June of 2013, the very, very first event, which was in Villa Giardino. And then we measured that to the end of the event 74. And we had 4747 days. So this was like very, very clear, like very intense mark, because event 74 had to do, of course, we know that Earth, tierra, and also human, humano, both of those words add up to 74, right? So it was like an event that expressed or represented this compromise from the signal and from Alejandra to the human, right? To the human, like it finally arrived to the inclusion of the human, which wasn't the case for the first 13 years. The first 13 years were like purely focused on the structure. So on the third day of event 74, we have this solar day, 739777. Okay. So there's like a huge precision with all of this. And on the event, we also worked a lot with apparatus 396, which has to do with the capacity that we are going to have to update the collective memory inside the solar code. Update 9, the collective memory, okay, inside the solar code. So here we can start noticing how much detail constantly we are adding to apparatus 396. And this is what Alec calls, we want to be professionals in the structure of the apparatuses. Okay, so here she starts talking about the foundational pattern, which is 7 with 6. What does 7 do in relation to 6? It adds space. That's why it's foundational. Foundational. So apparatus 396 is related to that because apparatus 396 has a role or has a function to update the frequency of the access to the memory that we have in the solar system. Like the solar system, the memory that we have as the solar system, it like apparatus 396 is the frequency of the access, not axis, but access of that. Yeah. Because the memory is what allows the third dimension to horizontalize the octave in the unified field and generate all this hypersynchronicity. That's why the memory is so important. It is what allows the third dimension to have a horizontal octave, because if the octave is not horizontal, we are talking about the instant, right? We wouldn't be able to have this separation of past, present, and future. We would only have future. That's why the horizontalization of the octave is also important. But it shouldn't be the main thing, because when we talk about horizontal octave, we're talking about Ro, okay? And Ro, yes, of course it's important, Ro, but the most important thing, like the primary thing, should be Ri, because Ri is what's going to have the capacity of providing stability to the Ro and providing credit to the Ro to continue to exist. So another thing we realized last minute, we realized all these things. There was like a hyper synchronization by the end of the event where we realized all these things. So we also realized that on the last day of the first event, the days of life of Alejandra were 15891, which is the update of 1581, which is the Asume year of apparatus 396. Okay, so it's like really hyper convergent. 1581 is a very important year, año Asume of apparatus 396, which is the mind of the context. Yes, mente in Spanish is 58. And every time we talk about contexto, that's 11, right? So we're talking about the mind of the context. And this is what the unified field needs so that we are able to operate in synchronicity in relation to the unified field. We need a mind that we need to be in contact with the mind of the context to be able to do that. Yes, because if not, what am I doing? I am only using my own mind, or someone else is managing my own mind. Yes, so of course we need to be in contact with my own mind and be able to differentiate that from the mind of the context, which is not the same thing. But they can connect, of course. Yes, they can work together. They should be working together. The thing is that from our side, we need to have the consciousness of all of this. Like I always say, this is space-temporal consciousness, not space-temporal unconsciousness. It is conscious. It should be a conscious thing that we are learning to do all of these things consciously. Now, we are able to read all of this because we are in an interdimensional development. It is a language that is getting closer and closer to us. It is slowly becoming more close to the language of the human. Yes, because it's coming from really, really far away, and slowly it's reaching the port of the lowest frequency, and it's going to continue to do that because LGC is going to be teachable, and it's going to be we're going to be able to learn it. We're going to be able to learn LGC. Okay, so for the whole of the first day of the event, we had the black table. All in black with no content in it. And something really, really amazing that Ale clarified, which is like a really small detail, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing to say the empty matriz. Remember, I'm saying matriz and not matrix because it's not the same thing, okay? Matriz. We are looking at it's not an empty matriz. It is a matriz full of nothingness. It is not the same thing because if it's full of nothingness, it means that it has all of the space for the observer. The observer that is going to be hosting what later is going to turn into the content. Okay, so it's not the same thing to say we have an empty matriz than to have a matriz full of nothing. Because if we have a matriz full of nothing, all of the spaces are inhabited by nothing itself, by the nothingness itself, okay? So here we have the matriz full of nothing. And on the second day, I don't have the exact photos for that because I wasn't taking any pictures. I was just like overwhelmed. But on the second day, there was an assignment of the elements. We started assigning on the elements, and was it from 1 to 118? I think it was like the regular table without the jump of the 7th level. And on the third day, we had all of the 118 space elements, but with, let's see, we had all of the elements here, but the seventh table was still in black. So we only had from 1 to 6, and then we had empty, full of nothing, 7th line, and then the last one was with the elements. Okay, but we didn't have the black spaces. We only had the 118. Okay, the others were not assigned. So the argument for Alejandra for this was that this was more respectful for society. Because if we only have the full table, it is like really aggressive for society. So it is like kind of like a consideration for the social consciousness. It is like an inclusion, like including the social consciousness and be like, okay, this is what we are working with the full table because we're working with the solar consciousness, but then we are doing an inclusion of the social consciousness, and we are still working with the table. So we only have the 118 spaces, but we have an empty 7th line. So it is like more bearable for somebody that doesn't have this resonance, okay? I know it gets a little bit fussy there, but don't worry about it. Okay, so the fact that we had the 7th level like that, we know that the 7th level is set so that we are able to have instantaneous updates and be able to keep the synchronization. Keep taking care of the 3rd dimension so that the 3rd dimension can continue to be developed. Because if we didn't have this space assigned for this, those instantaneous updates would not be safeguarding our gravitational octave. It would go directly there and it would generate a lot of instability. So that's the reason for that. Then she starts talking about how on the 3rd day of the event, because the first 2 days we were sitting in tables with the people from the same labs. And if there was like a lab that had too many people, we were together. Like for me, I was in the table with lab 18 and lab 22, I think. But on the 3rd day, we were grouped by apparatuses. We were sitting with the people from our apparatuses. And we realized that Event 74 had a people representing apparatuses 486 from 486 to apparatus 499. Like that was like the whole grid of representation. We had people from every apparatus from 486 to apparatus 499. So what is 86? That's radon, which is where our lap 6 ends in the table on the right. We have radon, 86, the end of lap 6. And then we have 499, which Ale says it's the apparatus that updates the fourth dimension so that it works inside one same field, so that it has a functioning inside one field, one unified field, the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension has to do with the argumentation of the third dimension, the argument that the third dimension is going to have to continue to exist. Yes, that's why we also talk about 4 and always relating 4 to the destiny. So that the third dimension, for the third dimension to have a destiny, it needs to have an argument. And it needs to be refreshing the argument so that it can continue to have an argument to continue to be existing. Yes, that's why people die. People die because they disconnect from the argument to continue to exist. The argument to continue to exist starts to lose, they start to run out of argument to continue to exist. That's why the event closes with, I will not abandon myself. And I'm talking about myself in a different dimension because I need to be generating argument for my third dimensional instance to continue to exist. So I will not abandon myself. That's fourth dimension. So yeah, that third day of the event, everybody was talking, like some people from every apparatus was talking and just like listening to them and their experience. The third day was completely about the community. Everybody had space to talk. It was like enough space to talk. It was really great because I feel like before, because of all the on the first 13 years of the development, we had so many interferences, and of course we weren't mature. We didn't have like a stable conceptual base and like all of these things, and it was like really unstable, the events in relation to the community. And now like in my experience, I feel like the community just reached a whole different level because everybody spoke, but I don't feel like anybody overreached or anybody invaded anybody else and all of that. Like there was more respect than before. So the person that represented apparatus 486 was a person that was 83 years old. Yes. And then the youngest, I think she was born in 1994, was it? 3, 4, 5, 6. No, 96. So she's like not even 30 yet. So yeah, we like for the youngest ones, we were able to put into value all these older apparatuses because they are the anchor apparatuses. Yes, the anchor apparatuses are the ones that anchor the meaning of life in the third dimension. It is like really important putting this into value because right now, because we have entered the digital era, everything becomes so volatile. There is no time for anything. Everything happens really fast, and we are bombarded by all these occurrences with very little capacity to develop them all. So yeah, it was like a very unique experience to talk about, like to just listen to everybody and just everybody having space to talk from their own experience, from apparatus 486 to apparatus 499. Really, it was really impressive. So this is the icon that Alejandra used for event 74. And this is like really, there's so much here. because I don't remember exactly in what event, but there was an instance of the development where we had this decoding, if we want to say, decoding of this sign that we always use in the social area, right? So if we look at it like this, we have an antenna, but we are not showing fingers 1. We are only showing fingers 2 and 3. That's why we call this the antenna 2. Like this is an antenna, right? But if we do it like this, we are not showing fingers 1, how I receive. I am not showing finger 4, how I argument what I'm doing, and finger 5, how I administrate what I'm doing. I am only showing how I function and how I take action. That's it. But the rest I'm hiding. So I show, but I show and I hide. I show this, but I hide. I show, but I don't see. I show to the people because this is also related to, like, for example, Putin. Yes, Putin is the perfect example of somebody who is showing but not seeing. Okay? Showing but not seeing. And then there's others that function, they are seeing but they are hiding. Okay? So when I do this, I show but I don't see. When I do this, I see but I don't show. Okay? Now in the example of Putin, recently I explained how he is a person that is not in how do you say it? Self-challenge. He is not in auto challenge. He's not self-challenging. He is somebody that challenges others. Okay. Um, so it is not the same thing to be in auto desafío, like a challenge. I am in this dynamic of challenging myself constantly, or if I am in a function of challenging others, which is what we call interference. Well, okay. So with all of this said, we have the icon of event 74. Here, what do we have? We have all of this very, like, nothing is hiding. Everything is open here. See? We don't have this thing, this double function of I hide, I see, I don't see, all of this, like, situation. No, here we have everything is out in the open. And this is another quality that Event 74 had. Everything was out in the open. It was like bright. It was like really bright. It was like nobody could hide. Nobody could hide anything. Everything was really wide open in like for everybody to see. So this is like the icon. And also the little heart surrounding 74, which is the human. Like the commitment with the human, to include the human in all of this. It was really beautiful, really. So on the third day, when we entered the room for the event, Alejandra said, this is the embassy. It is like we are representing the embassy of the fourth dimension inside the third dimension. So for me, when I listened to that, I was like, what? What are you talking about? The embassy of the fourth dimension? This is crazy. But yes, that's what she said. The embassy of the fourth dimension inside the third dimension. So looking to our occurred lives up until this moment, but looking at it from the fourth dimension, to be able to take the value from everything that has occurred. See the value, right? Because we have 7-4. 7-4 is taking the value of our everything that has occurred from the fourth dimension. Because we need to put into value everything that we have lived, everything that has occurred to us in our lives. We have to put that into value so that we can take that as an impulse and take charge of all of that, like become responsible of all of that, and use it to go into the next stage. Because we are going into the next stage of our species. Our species is going into a new stage. Okay. So next event, which is in August, we have event 75. Event 75 inside apparatus 507. And what is event 75 telling us? It's telling us that we have to update the gravitational octave. Remember, every time we talk about 5775, we are talking about either the interpreter or the gravitational octave. So this is going to depend on us. The update of our gravitational logic. So what would that be? Like, what does that mean, the gravitational logic? It is the logic that I am going to have that is going to be guiding me when I am implemented inside the third dimension, which is the densest form that we have. Yes, the densest level of materialization. So what logic am I going to have while I'm gravitationally implemented? This is what we're going to this is what we're preparing for towards event 57. Even 75, sorry. Even if we're not there, it doesn't matter. Event 75 is happening. Yes. And it's a global thing. So she's saying that this relation of 74 tierra and 74 humano needs to become consolidated. So perspective 74 is the one that you take from the fourth dimension to configure the third dimension, because we're talking about the value, like the validation of the argument that's going to be supporting the third. Remember when Ale talked about Mars and she talked about Marte está para amarte? Mars is here to love you. Amarte is to love you. In Spanish, amarte, right? In songs, people use that a lot. The Marte, amarte. Instead of interpreting Mars as the planet of war and the warrior and the god of war and all of that. No. Mars is here to love you because it's containing, the orbit of Mars contains the orbit of Earth. And that's why there was so much love in the event as well. So much love in the event. It was overwhelming. Okay, so the perspective 74 is the one taken from the fourth dimension to configure the third. Okay, so there was a lot about the species. And here she talks about our species is divided in male and female, right? And this has to do a lot with the clan, because the clan is a specific implementation of the species. It is the species, the one that organizes our clans. That's why we have attraction to the other members of the species, because we want the species wants to mix and match and it wants to generate new members of the species with improved qualities, right? Like the improvement of the species, the improvement of the qualities of everything that was failing before, and creating new members of the species with all these like new qualities. The thing is that the new members of the species have a challenge. Like if they are born after apparatus 500, they're going to have a lot of difficulty with stability. So this is why it's so important for us that we were born before apparatus 500 to provide that stability to all the new members of the species. that are gonna have a lot of these novelties because they were born in a different ionosphere, completely different ionosphere, but they're probably gonna have a little challenge with the stability with the anchor. Okay, so this situation with the species of male and female has a lot to do with the clan, because the clan is where this new generation is going to be deposited. Like the new generation, right, of the species is going to be deposited in the clan. So this influence of the clan was very present throughout the event, especially for Alejandra, because her mother was there and her sister was there. And when event 47 was happening, is where she had this huge impact with her partner at the time. And Alejandra's partner at the time, Darío, was just going out with everybody from the events. And she realized this in event 47. So there was like, so she says that this whole situation, of course, she doesn't tell us about her personal life so that we gossip about it. No, it is an interdimensional education. Her life itself is. So what she shows is how she managed to capitalize all of that, right? That impact took her to a whole different level of capitalization, and it had to do with the species. Yes, this whole thing had to do more with the species because Darío, okay, the configuration of the species is the survival of the fittest, right? Even when there is a mother that has a baby elephant or whatever, and that baby elephant is weak or it has something, there's something wrong with it, and that is a threat for the survival of the whole, right? So in nature, what happens is that they just leave. They leave the babies or kill the babies even. Some mothers in the animal world kill the babies because they are weak and they are a threat to the whole. So in the configuration of the species is like competition and like survival of the fittest, and like in the case of Darío, which he had like more like very, very strong configuration of the species, not very clan. I'll explain the clan later, but like so he wasn't a person that wanted to teach anybody anything because he always wanted to have that extra scope to have advantage, that extra advantage, because he was like on the configuration, on that configuration of the species. But when we're talking about the clan, it's the other way around. It is like, okay, I see somebody that needs support. So what I do is I develop myself to the point that I can actually provide support to the smallest member of the species or the weakest or whatever, right? Like an actual big brother, like an actual big brother, like an actual parent that takes care of somebody that is still developing, instead of being like, no, you are weak, you are useless, I'm gonna kill you. No, 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 no. You know? And it's not that we are gonna have one or the other. No, we have both. Yes, we have both, because the part of the species is what's going to keep us like in shape, so to speak. But it's not going to be based on like taking advantage of others or like competition and all of that. No, it is just like a thing that is going to be motivating me to continue to develop myself and like the areas that I need to develop myself and all of that. But like in my case, I thought I was like, oh my God, I think I have more, like I have a more strong how do I say it? Functioning from the species. I thought at first, because I am very good at like setting boundaries and like not taking responsibility from other people and all of that. But then I realized, I'm like, no, I unalive myself helping others all the time, and I've always been this way. Like even if I don't, and I thought this because I didn't have any children specifically. But I'm always helping people. Every single person that comes into my life, um, I try to help. So I was like, okay, no, I have both. I really do have both because I'm always supporting and I'm always developing myself. And the actually like the motivation in my life to continue to develop myself is being able to provide support to others better. So this is really nice also because we are able to map ourselves, right? Like get to know ourselves better. The update of our own the perception that we have of ourselves because we have finished the first 11 laps. Yes. So now it is like we that those first 11 laps have occurred and now I'm like, okay, I have this new creation. And yes, others are going to be mapping me too. And I'm going to be mapping others in their updates and in their new creations. So it's like a really, really exciting. Okay. So that's why she says in event 47, we have this whole the situation of the conflict of the species or like conflict of the species or with the species. So what this impact had for Alejandra was a retraction that had to do with her she had to recognize the species so that she could be able to go inside the container. A recognition of the frame of the species. Because remember we have entorno, species, clan, and personal, right? So by that moment, Alejandra was basically only working at the level of the entorno. It is as if she wasn't recognizing the species. So that's what that impact in her relationship with Dario did. That was the capitalization, her recognition of the species, so that she could go inside the container. And then the clan is next, right? So that's why she says the influence of the clan was very present. What is the influence of the clan? Supporting each other. We don't necessarily have to be related or be of the same clan. I think she's talking more at the level of at the human level of humanity, right? Providing support to each other, complementing each other instead of competing with each other and seeing what advantage I have on the other person so that I can always be on top and like stepping on everybody so that I can be on top, which is like what we know that is happening in society now, like still happening, of course. But what we can see is that slowly all of that is losing credit. So, okay. So on the 10th of June, was the 10th of June? Yeah. So the recording of Alejandra en Red 161 was on the 10th of June. And on the 10th of June of 2017, that's where Alejandra had the impact. Event 47 was in 2017. Yes, the impact, it was in 2017. But another mark that we have is Alejandra's days of life on the 10th of June of 2017, which is 17353. Okay, 353 is the processor. So she had to process violently these conflicts of the species. So now she said event 74 was completely opposite because her mom was there, her sister was there with her and participating, okay? Because another thing was that the reason why Alejandra and Dario broke up was because Alejandra wanted to support her family and Dario he didn't like that. He didn't like that because he wasn't, like, he never had this thing of supporting others, right? He always had this thing of taking advantage of others. The thing is that, okay, Dario, with all of his flaws and all of his defects, has been unconsciously very important in the development, and we have learned a lot from him, even though it's been quite completely unconscious for him. And also another thing is that we should be looking at all of this from our fifth dimensional observer, right? And understanding that Alejandra did need Dario's anchor in the first years of the development that she did not have. She had no anchor whatsoever with the memories of the container whatsoever, right? She had no anchor. So I think that is like really important to keep in mind, that it doesn't like, it is not about gossip. It is not about Alejandra sharing her personal life just for entertainment. No. Like all of these things are very important for the anchoring of the development. So that is like the main purpose of Dario was that. Okay. So the commitment that the fourth dimension is going to have towards the third is, I will not abandon myself. I will always be creating destiny. I will always be creating destiny. Because 7 is the observer and 4 is the destiny. So we have the observer of the destiny, or the observer lighting the way of the destiny. Yes? I will not abandon myself. The observer, what is the observer? It is the consciousness. The consciousness, the observer, not abandoning this creation of the destiny for the third dimension. I will not abandon myself. So the observer of the destiny is a fourth dimensional function, not a third dimensional function, because the third dimension is the perception. It's like to perceive that this protection of the fourth dimension is happening. Yes, that this is happening all the time. This containment of the fourth dimension towards the third is happening all the time. And this is the internal voice we have. That self-stimulation, that self-determination, that self-companionship. Like I am with myself, being with myself, stimulating myself, motivating myself, accompanying myself. Yes, that is the fourth dimensional function. It is me in another level. Okay, so this is what we were doing as we were walking down the hydrogen bridge. So I'm sure Ninke has this too. Like for me, I'm still working through assimilating what happened, honestly. Like I listened to the program, and then I worked on the material, and then I am talking about it now, and like every time it's like again and again, like assimilating what just happened. So yeah, it is myself in another dimension. The first person to walk on that hydrogen bridge, because we walked physically, there was like Alejandra physically printed the hydrogen bridge, and it was on the floor, and we walked on the hydrogen bridge towards the icon for event 74. It was amazing. And the first person that walked, it was the person that was 83 years old, representing apparatus 486. It was so emotional. Everybody was crying. And then all of the apparatuses after that, everybody walking, right? For like 2 hours. It was really impressive. The people that, like the biggest group, the biggest table of in the apparatuses was apparatus 491. 491. Alejandra reads this in 2 different ways. Like now, it has infinite ways to read it, but now it is aparato dia, which is day, but dia is 491. Yes, dia, which is the update of the anatomical destination. The update, why is the update of the anatomical destination so important? If we don't constantly update, and use this function of day, we're connecting to the day, and the day is bringing all novelties constantly because the sun is moving in the universe and the earth is moving around the sun relatively. We have to be updating constantly. That is like the function of the day, the update of the anatomical destination. If we are doing this constantly, we are going to be amplifying our anatomical projection, which means more credit to continue to be alive. It doesn't mean that we're going to be immortal, but if I am not abandoning myself, if I am creating destiny constantly, if I am argumenting constantly my existence, then I am going to be having credit to continue to exist. It is not like I'm going to be operating inside a pre-programmed octave that I just experience and decide if it's good or bad and then finish. And then I have no option to reconfigure or update my anatomical destination. So we want this, like if this is like another thing, we are working a lot with apparatuses. Yeah, this is one of like the very important functions of Aparato 491. So there was like a lot of people from that apparatus. 491 is Dia, which is, of course, today. What am I going to do today? What value does today have? What is the plan for today? Yes. And in the day, we accompany ourselves from the radar. Yes, we want the radar to be working together with the preference or the bias. Bias is going to be all the things that I prefer. Yes, because when I am implemented inside the unified field, I am going to have things that are my preference and my own assignments of value. Yeah. The thing is that I am going to be sharing, because it's a collective field, I'm going to be sharing that space with many other particularities that are going to have their own assignments of value, and not necessarily it's going to be the same as mine. So that's okay. So, but all the things that I'm not going to be able to include in my own preference, then I include them in my radar because I still need it. Even though if it's not my preference, I am not going to reject it completely and shut it out. No, because I need it in my radar. Yes, I am going to pick up that thing, put it in my radar, and then just allow it to, so that I can allow my processor to include that. But I include it in a more abstract area. I don't have to include it in my preference. In my preference, I include what I prefer. Yes, because that is going to make me very precise. I don't want to force things inside. Like I don't want to force things that are not my preference. Yes, but there's a place for that. There's a place for all the things that are not my preference. Okay. So accompanying ourselves from the radar so that the part that is in the third dimension can be comfortable in their preference. It can be comfortable in their own focus. Yes, but we are accompanying ourselves in another dimension. That's really amazing. Now, what was Alejandra's vacant in the event? What happens? Alejandra doesn't choose her vacant. She takes the first vacant that someone rejects. Yeah, like saying somebody paid for a vacant and then they were like, no, I'm not going, or I can't do it, or something like that. So she takes it. And that was vacant 41. Vacant 41 in event 74. That's like, wow. So we have 7-4 and then Alejandra 4-1. So she connects that to apparatus 1447. Apparatus 1447 is the backup apparatus of 507. And we get there by adding 3760 years to the year that we are actually on. So for example, we are on year 2026, and then we add 3760, which is a whole other development. And we have year 5786. Yes. So the apparatus that contains 5786 is apparatus 1447. This whole development was very thoroughly explained in the program where Alejandra opened King Charles and his metrics, because 1447, that frequency is inside King Charles's solar day. Okay, and it's like really, really intense. So if you guys want to know more about that, we can look back, and because it's really, really greatly explained there. Okay, so she says, I was sustaining that position, supporting that position in all of the event. She was like really impressed and a little bit overwhelmed and really emotional, because there were so many things that just occurred or appeared very, very last minute, that were not planned. She did plan some things, like what she was able to plan, but there was like this whole other part of the event that was not planned at all. Like so much information, so much data that appeared last minute. So we talked also in the event, because plata in Spanish has the atomic number of 47. Yes, silver has the atomic number of 47. This is not the word, but the atomic number of the element, 47. And then wolframio has 74. Yes, the atomic number of wolframio. We've been working a lot with plata wolf, this dual function of plata wolframio. So she talks about the silver string. I hadn't heard about this before, but I think, like mystically speaking, there's like this whole mystical interpretation of the silver string. Yes, like this connection. But the silver string here in LGC has to do with like being able to function inside the unified field. So that silver string is that position 47, but who supports or holds like the origin that holds that silver string, that's going to be 74. 74 is going to be holding that silver string from the fourth dimension, which is a fourth-dimensional identity. That fourth dimensional identity is going to be the one sustaining or supporting our every step inside the third dimension, the silver string. Okay, so it is us. It is not some external deity or entity, whatever. No, it is us in another dimension, in the fourth dimension, and it is us in the third. So this is the relationship that we are going to we want to make stronger. Yes, that's why the promise of I will not abandon myself. I will not abandon myself. It is myself in the fourth dimension, holding. It is like the people that enter caves, yeah, and they tied themselves with a string, but there's somebody outside holding the string. They go into the cave, but there's a string. Yes, so you don't get lost in there. Something like that. Except we're talking about fourth dimension, and it's me in another my fourth dimensional identity holding that silver string for the third dimension. That is the commitment of the hydrogen bridge, walking those 30 spaces from helium to hydrogen, marking that purpose. So Alejandra said like she's really emotional. She doesn't have a lot of words. She's still going through like the post-event, because really that post-event was, for me, it was like a week. It was like a whole week of post-event where I was just like, I wasn't being able to believe what just happened, honestly. Like after the event, we were just like, what just happened? What just happened? Like really, really, I don't know, like a big impression. Okay. So Letty says that we were all very happy, very satisfied, very thankful. It was a very unique experience, very rich. Everybody was like really, really happy. So Ale says that, yeah, that the team, the community is becoming more consolidated. The people are very connected with each other. Her Alejandra's sister, the people that help Alejandra in the event, like the support, the technical support of the event, that don't know much or understand much about LGC, and they were like just really happy to be there. They were like, I never saw something like this. Like they were really happy, and really like the impact reached them as well. And we had so many emotions. Alejandra was like, how was it possible that we were able to have so many emotions and never lose precision, never lose this technicality, this precision, this never lose the neutrality of the signal, right? So we had those two things combined perfectly. Because before there was like this, there like the emotional part wasn't converging too much with the signal, and on the event it was like perfect synchronicity. um Really, really balanced. Another thing that we worked a lot in the event was the metrics of the solar system. And specifically we worked a lot with Pluton, with Pluto in the ninth orbital, and just calculating, because for Pluto to make one trip around the sun is 248 years for us. Yeah. So we calculated when Pluto did its ninth lap around the sun since 2026, right? Like starting from year one, not from 2026, sorry. Starting from year one, and then just calculating when Pluto was going to complete its ninth orbital. And that was year 2232, 2232. Yes, that was the year. So we worked a lot with that. She's saying that reality is behaving in a wonderful way, in a very educational way, and that we are before a very special moment of LGC where language is going to be more accessible. The people that help Ale with the administration of the event said that like they were able to grasp some of it, that it was like more understandable, a little bit closer. They felt more included, and all of that. So we are in a point where we are being able to create a lot of equilibrium, a lot of balance. Yeah. So, okay, we have events of apparatus 507. Here we have the events. Wait, let's do the little colors. So we have the events of year Asume, Asimila, and then next year we're going to have events 76 and 77, and 2028, 78, and 79. So it's like really impressive, because Ale says it is exactly what we're going to need to be able to fulfill, or fulfill the demands of apparatus 507. Apparatus 507 occurred, needs to have these things fulfilled, because 507 is the anchor of 508. And Ale is saying, in apparatus 508, we come into the world. LGC comes into the world. So this implies a very big maturity from all of us. And this is a stage that touches a lot maturity at the personal level. Okay, so she's noticing this, of course, in her personal life, because she's saying that right now the personal aspect of Alejandra is having a lot more influence than it had before, because before it was like pure online. And now she was able to prepare some material from before, and when it wasn't the case before, like it was just pure online, she wasn't like able to prepare anything. But we're talking about 14 years of the development, and she began just now. So she's saying, yeah, this is what happens in LGC because clearly I am moving towards densification very slowly. So Alejandra says, I am moving towards densification very, very slowly. But we are starting to see how this is starting to include the personal area. So it's including all of the scales. It began strictly from the entorno, where not even like the solar part or the earth part was even talked about in the very beginning. Yeah, we were working with very precarious concepts, universal concepts. And then we started to work towards scale by scale, very, very elegantly. And now we are reaching the personal. Okay, another thing that was talked about in the event was this thing about power and direction. Power and direction. Because if we notice, people that seek power and have power lose direction. Yeah, so but these two things don't necessarily have to be like enemies or opposite to each other. No, they complement each other. Okay, so here we have the mission of the position of C in relation to the SE cardinality, because the SE cardinality has four points, right? One is Si, one is Sol, one is Do, and one is On. Okay? So those 4 points configure the SE cardinality. The SI part, which is the architect, is it's what's responsible for the orientation inside the unified field, inside the SE cardinality. Then we have on the other side, we have On, which is the unified field or the memories of the unified field. That is where power and the magnetic order is going to be hosted. But the thing is, if I'm not able to generate opposition to the magnetical order from the electric order, I will not be able to balance me. Me needs to be balanced. It needs to have its dosage of collective memory, yes, but I need to be able to counterbalance that with the electrical order, which is the electrical order has more to do with the antenna member of the universe, the electric order, and then the antenna member of the species is going to be more related to the magnetic order. But this needs to be there needs to be balance there, okay? So I need to have a dosage of particular registration of my own preference, my own radar, and my own route inside the collective field. So I need all of those things to keep balance inside the unified field, to keep my balance in there. A dosage of my particular registration of my own preference, my radar, and my route inside the collective field, so that me is able to have balanced. So we need all of that. We also need the magnetic order and the dosage of collective memories. But we need to be administrating all of that, because if we are not administrating all of that, if I abandon myself, then I am going to be dragged around and I'm going to be managed by the memories instead of me administrating those memories. So C, which is related to the architect, is going to be the author if I take the responsibility, right? Because if not, if it's too much work for me, then I'm just going to leave the reins for some external entity to take. I'm going to leave it vacant. But if I don't want to do that, then yeah, I'm going to be the author of whatever I'm going to be experiencing. I'm going to have the reins of my anatomic projection inside the unified field. It doesn't matter. Like for me, I'm like, I don't care if the result is crap. I am going to manage my own particular projection. I'm not going to let anything manage it. Maybe of course, nobody is exempt to interferences, of course. But what interferences do is that they're going to show us all the things that we need to improve in our code, yeah? But I want to be in charge of my own anatomical projection. Now, C is the author. Tierra is the editorial that's going to publish that. The editorial is going to provide a folder to the antenna of the universe, which is going to be the author, while the member of the species is going to be the writer. So we have an occurred life that is it's gonna have something that's written. I'm gonna be there's gonna that work, whatever, like a life. We can think about a life as something that was written and that can be read. Yeah. But the thing is that every time, like for example, think about a famous person that died. They wrote and they published their work and they died. And that life is public, and we can go and read somebody else's life and have our own interpretation because it's now public, right? So here Alice says, in the beginning, the work belongs more to the author, but after the beginning, it belongs more to the editorial. Once it's published, right? Once it's published, it becomes part of the editorial because that's the Earth. And the Earth is the one that records everything. It belongs to the Earth. Because what does the Earth do? The editorial, what does it do? It has this amazing library to create improvements. Yeah. So we can go back and read at this amazing library that the Earth has to create improvements. That's like the whole purpose. Okay, what is lab 11? Contexto. Each one is recording their context in this asimila year. And it's very important that this context is as real as possible because we have to incorporate everything that is not myself. And this might be very uncomfortable, but if we manage to do this as much as we can, like integrate as many matrices that are not my own, all of that becomes part of my scope next year. If I'm able to incorporate matrices that are not my own, that might be uncomfortable, but I'm able to incorporate it, it becomes part of my scope next year. Yeah. So, but every time that we get a new scope, a new reach, it's like throwing yourself in skis from a mountain and surfing things that you never thought you would be able to surf. So if we are able to get through this asimila year that way, with everything that is not me, even though it's going to be uncomfortable, that becomes nutrition for next year. So if we want this nutrition to be very strong, we need to be able to do this part of the assimilation. So of course, if I am assimilating this year, then I need to have been able to assume last year. So I have to assume something, then I assimilated, and then I can challenge what I have assimilated. Because if I don't do all of this, the part of the challenge is not going to be my own decisions. Like I'm not going to be the one deciding to take the challenges. They're going to be like a little bit like imposed if I'm not assimilating what I need to be doing. Yes, what the code is asking us to do. Then it's not going to be very voluntary and it's not going to be very pleasant. So the challenge is not going to be my own decision. It's going to be apropiado. Remember, I never translated because there's no translation. Propio and apropiado. Propio is something that comes from me. Apropiado is something that comes from outside. Yes, it is like me adjusting to an external demand, but it doesn't come from me, okay? So if I don't do all of these things, the challenges are not going to be coming from me. They're going to come from outside. So I'm going to be dragged around by the context and the entorno, okay? And I don't want that. We are also noticing how the ro becomes very volatile and the ri gains stability. In the digital era, as we move inside apparatuses 500, the premises or like we talked about how the credit from ro is shifting to ri. And it has to do with like deepening and growing our ri axis, And that's going to give us a lot of stability, and we are going to be able to provide stability to the ro, okay? And we are observing in slow motion how the ro becomes unstable. But we have to reason all of this. We have to reason because it's not enough to just experience it. Experiencing something is not enough. We have to reason what we are experimenting. This is why it is so important to work so much in your own anchor, in the creation of meaning. Because all of these things are going to be making us way more stable. And when things around us become unstable, we are able to compensate because we have internal stability and we can be generators of stability. The same way that can be generators of meaning, generators of argument. Yes, because it is a completely different time. Things are not given anymore. We have to consciously work in the maintaining of our anatomical existence. So she's also saying that whether or not you have been doing internal work, it's going to notice. Like it's going to show. If you worked a lot internally and if you didn't work a lot internally, it's going to show. Yeah? So Ale says, we are preparing to get off the boat into the social field. We're preparing, but we're not there yet, okay? We're just preparing. Another thing that we worked a lot in the event was the movies of Christopher Nolan and The Origin. Well, specifically The Origin and Copenhagen and following, yeah? We looked at his metrics and yeah, like it's just a lot, really. It's just a lot. But the thing is that the part with The Origin, like the movie of The Origin, really is very educational in how our re-axis has been interfered with. Yes, like inserting something that we take and think that we came up with it, when really it's an inception. it's an invasion of our re-axis. Yeah. So we are working with the different layers of consciousness that this puzzle or this amazing infrastructure of the space-temporal structures has. Yes, we are working with the different fields of consciousness that the space-temporal structures have, and how the unified field keeps everything synchronized. And we ask ourselves, how could it be that we have access to the universal language of the space-temporal structures? It is like crazy. It is something that like really, it's unbelievable. But it's something that we can learn, we can modulate, we can teach. We're going to be able to teach this, we're going to be able to learn this, and we are working very intensely so that this is possible. Here she starts talking about how she's gonna barely begin to come together with the 4 people that she named as official LGC channels, so to say. And she says, please, the fact that she named 4 people, it's because that's the only capacity that Alejandra has. Okay. And it's not that they like that people think that we get together with Ale all the time and like we are always interacting with Alejandra. No. It's not the case either for the 7011 and for those 4 people that are, named. They are barely gonna begin working together and like finding more structured material to work with and stuff. The thing is that LGC is very different, like from everything that we learn and the how we learn, socially speaking, is very different. It breaks every pre-existent mold. So we're gonna figure out how we're gonna do this together. So on the day of the recording, the 5th stage of life on Earth marker was on 3573, which is space-temporal structures. Yes, 373, and we have a 5 here, which is an administration variable. So another thing we have here is 3 containing 57, which is the 3rd orbital is developing a gravitational logic in a very professional way. Much more professional than before. Right? So then she says, okay, what we're doing right now is just commenting on the event, because logically we cannot go through every single thing of the event right now in an Ale en Red, because the event is it's a body of huge and deep and hyper synchronized body of knowledge. Yes, of conocimiento. Another thing we have here is this anticipation of event 75. Okay, another thing, the solar day of the recording of the program, 739779. Yeah, so we have 9779. So Alice says, yes, this is exactly what we are defining. We are crossing the hydrogen bridge. When we are crossing the hydrogen bridge, the removal of the gold standard marker was on 221. 200 is successful connection, and 21 is the capacity to respond, which is the T in Toganeson. Yeah. So she says, how can there be so much convergence? It is exactly what's happening. We are capitalizing all of this very, like, it is like a really great capitalization of this interference we had with the gold standard. We are assuming a solar consciousness while we are installed in the 3rd dimension, and it is a synchronicity that you could like it is unbelievable. Really, it is really unbelievable. It's really hard to believe, but it is like right there. It's like right there, like when you see something and you can't believe it. Yes, it is there. So we have 9779 here. So we have Oro Berkelio, right? Now, she says, when gold does the work that it needs to do from the solar code, because we're not talking about the mineral, right? We're talking about the function at the level of solar code. When gold does the job that it needs to do from the solar code, it doesn't matter whose pocket is, like, who has the gold in their pocket. It doesn't matter. If the gold does what it needs to do, we're all going to be okay, because it's not about the mineral, it's about the solar code that the unified field executes, and that is the parabolic antenna. Yes, gold has to do with the parabolic antenna and how the unified field executes that once it's codified. Okay, our planet Earth is integrating into the express universe, the civilized express universe. I think I missed universo expresado. Along with the sun, of course, and in a very elegant way. the thing is that without this effect of the parabolic, this wouldn't be possible. If we hadn't updated the solar code the way that we are doing, this would be a terror, like it would be worse than it is right now. Like we would be practically self-destructing if we hadn't updated the solar code the way that we have been doing it. So what we are having is the consciousness of the update. See here, the consciousness of the update. Okay. So that's what we did in the event. We clarified a lot of things in relation to the orbital of Pluto. And she says, in the most silly way that you can imagine. Yes, in the most basic way, because we're not doing all these things that the scientists are doing, like calculations and like theories and all of that. No, no, no. Like, it's very precarious. It's really very precarious. The thing is that we have been preparing, everything that we have been doing is so that we can prepare so that the signals are readable, understandable, learnable, and teachable. Because this is not mysterious, it's not mystical. That's why we are hold on. My cat is doing something really cute. That's why we see so much training. Okay? She says, I train so many, like several hours a day to explain so many things. And she says that this group of 7-Eleven is her training. Yes, it's her training because she's constantly trying to be more clear and more clear and more clear and have like explanations that are more understandable each time. If she didn't have that, like she couldn't have, like she wouldn't be able to have this clarity. And honestly, 7-Eleven is just something else. Okay, so updates reach an area that is mute, okay? The updates reach first an area that is mute, that is frequential. And the thing is that Alejandra talks about things that have never been said, have never been explained before. So it's not an easy thing because she is describing things that in another dimension are all together, right? All together, all at once, and in different scales. It's all simultaneous. But in order to be able to talk about it, you need to traduce things, and she needs to find a way to integrate all of that with whatever the collective memory has. And what the collective memory has is very little compared to what the express universe has. Now imagine trying to translate something from the express universe and trying to synchronize it with what the collective memory has. It's really hard to explain something so big with such little resources. Okay, so red 161 and day 161, it was recorded on day 161. And beginning lap 11, and she is putting a lot of emphasis on the collective memory. So we have 6 and we have 11, yes? And she's emphasizing a lot on the collective memory because the collective memory is what allows us to be integrated in an agenda that is multidimensional and that is synchronized. The thing is that if we are not connected with the radar and we are only connected with the bias or the preference, we are not going to be able to take everything that is in our disposition. But the thing is that it is there. It is there. If we are only like focused in our preference and we're not working with the radar, we are not going to be able to take everything that is available. We're not going to be able to see it. So she says, when this solar day 739779 is in the anchor, right? And the next day is 739780. She says, I hope there's a greater capacity to sink into everything that's available outside of the memory, of the collective memory, outside everything that has already happened, and sink into everything that's going to happen, because what's going to happen is millions of times more important and greater and more fabulous than everything we have lived before. So we have to trust and like motivate ourselves to letting it go, letting it go, letting the memories and the past go and sink into what's gonna happen. Yeah, but the thing is that doing that gives panic to the body. The body enters into the panic because the body likes to repeat. The body needs a repetition. Yeah. But then Alice says, I think that this lap 11 is gonna detonate an appetite for antimatter. We're gonna be more like there's gonna be more itch for the anti-material aspect. So we're gonna be less scared and more tenacious. Yes, like more brave and like going into the world and like exposing and expressing and like dealing with things, because we already have all of this infrastructure behind us supporting us. Another mark that we have is from year 1. If we count like the laps from calendaria from year 1 to 2026 and lap 18 lap 11 included, we find total lap, the count of total laps is 4, 4, 5, 6, 1. Yes? Total laps of calendaria from year 1, including lap 11. So including lap 12, this would be like this, okay? But for lap 11 is like this. So what do we have here? We have the filter 4, 5, 6 in site 41, which is the destiny of the receiver. Yeah? We have 4, 5, 6 in the anatomical destiny. So she says this includes so many things that are very, very technical, but really everything is looking really, really well. Like there's a lot of hope here because everything is looking really, really quite well, of course, from the solar perspective. Yes, of course, from the solar perspective, because socially, not so much. Not so much, because the credit for the social is shortening each time. That's why we're seeing what we are seeing. So she says, the only people that should be scared are the ones that bet everything towards the manipulation of the destinies of people. The people that bet everything they had towards manipulating others, those are the ones that should be scared. But the ones that did not dedicate their lives to that, we should be celebrating because things are turning around. Okay? We're going to be able to detect the intentions of others in a way that was never available before. Okay? So yes, this is really when I went through this part. This was before the earthquake in Venezuela, and she said, "Is there a lot to fall apart? Like, is there still many things that need to crumble?" Yes, because we have lived with like hiding, people hiding, lying, manipulating, cheating, right? So all of that is going to be crumbling and it may be traumatic. She said this right like before the earthquake. That is why we need to be in so much contact with ourselves and with my own perception from the fourth dimension so that I can orient myself in the third. So assuming that fourth dimension is I will not abandon myself. And that is key. So she says, go to sleep and think about that. I will not abandon myself. I will not abandon myself. We go to sleep and we are going towards the new stage, the new step in our species, in our human species. So here she mentions, as she usually does, the donations for Alejandra and Red program for Leti. We can find the data in her videos. She has kept this program for years, right? And really it has been this link between Alejandra and the community, right? The broader community. And Alejandra is very, of course, grateful for this. And she also said that, like, in these years, she had to face all these personal challenges, right? That these last 2 years were really, really intense for her personal life. Because it's reality pulling from where it hurts all the time, because it's reality trying to develop us, right? So she says, right now I am grateful because I understand the training, and she understands that all of those bombs that she had in her personal life were the best elevators, yes, to be where she is now. So she talks about, of course, the documentary of the first 13 years of the LGC. And she says that it is like the first little step towards moving horizontally, like working on things horizontally. Where before she like couldn't do any planification or coordinate anything. Well, right now she's like, she feels like this can begin, like coordination and preparing material and all of that. The thing is that we had to get through all this Machiavellic stage. We had to go through all of that, where everything is coded, everything is hidden. Nobody says what they mean. They say something and they do something else, and all of these things. We had to go through all of that, right? But hopefully all that's done. The thing is that this signal is extremely transparent and extremely literal. While the Machiavellic structure works exactly in the opposite way. It works hiding, it works mimetizing, like mimetizing one thing with another, so that I'm doing something that it seems that I'm doing something else, and like the marketing and the hiding and all of that, okay? It's completely the opposite. It is completely transparent and completely literal. There's nowhere we can hide anything anymore. So yeah, but the thing is that going through that Machiavellic structure allowed us to have the maturity we like that is not possible for us, but we're doing it slowly. So she gets really emotional, like she thanks everybody, the four people that she named, and Bruno and Jorgelina, which were the people in charge of the documentary, and Letty and her support group, her mom, her sister, and that she gets really emotional and really happy. She says that they never got along better, they never understood each other better, and that these are the results of all of the work and all of the updates. This is like the fruit of all of that. It is like the evidence of all the work that we have been doing. So it is a new stage. It is a new instance for the development, a new stage for the human species. I will not abandon myself. And yeah, the next RED program, which is already out for Lab 12, is published on frequency 177, like planet Mercury. Okay, so yeah, that is where we are. That is where we are. Alejandra Casado en Red 161, Lab 11, right after Event 74. It was a beautiful, beautiful program. I'm gonna stop the recording so that we can have our little space to chat, okay? Thank you, guys. Okay, bye.